If you've been in the freelancing world for long, you've probably heard the term scope creep, but you might not know what this means. Unfortunately, it's a problem that many freelancers fall victim to. Scope creep happens when you agree to a statement of work or to a certain project with a client, and then they keep adding on little bells and whistles. Now, this can happen in two ways. First, the client might keep adding additional things for you to do without increasing the pay. Now, this can be really frustrating because not only did you never agree to do these additional steps and stages and tweaks, but you've also got the problem of not being compensated for the additional time and effort you're putting into taking care of these projects. So let's walk through a writing example of what that looks like. If a client asks me to write something and add it to the back end of their website, and that's all we've agreed to and that's all I'm being paid for, if they ask me to then add pictures, add backlinks to other things on their site, to include metadata, to schedule it on their social media, that's scope creep unless we go back to the drawing board and revisit the contract because I didn't agree to do all of those things. And remember, this is up to you as the freelancer to negotiate in your proposals and to clarify exactly what is and isn't included. These steps and tasks should be outlined in the proposal or statement of work and also in the contract so that it's perfectly clear. That way the client has two opportunities to say, that's not all I'm hoping you'll do. Now, the second problem that can happen with scope creep is if the client does pay you for the work, but you don't know how to do it, don't want to do it, or never agreed to do it. So if we go back to that same writing example, maybe you're getting paid hourly and the client says, oh yeah, just bill me for the extra time to add the metadata, to add the pictures, to add the backlinks. But if that doesn't fit into your schedule or doesn't work for the way that your business is structured, that can also be an indication of scope creep. This is why we have conversations about proposals and contracts with clients up front so we can clarify exactly what we're going to do and not do. I had an example of scope creep with a client once where I was building an online course for them, but I was very clear at the outset that I would only be providing them with basic PowerPoint templates and suggestions of what should go on each stage. I told them from day one, graphic design is not my strong spot, and I don't want to be spending time doing it because it's not going to be the quality you need or might expect, but I will provide you with what I think should go on each slide. Now, the client pushed back once we were in that phase of the project, saying that they wanted numerous revisions to the template, and I was able to direct them exactly back to our previous conversations and the contract to say, I told you from day one that's not something I can do. It's not even something I want to do for additional pay. So as the freelancer, you have to be the one who takes on the role of deciding how much you're going to let scope creep happen, if at all. Unfortunately, in the online space, it's become a really rampant problem in the freelance world, and it can be really toxic, and it can end up making you actually hate that client or dread doing the work for them. Not every client realizes that they're doing it, so you always want to give them the benefit of the doubt first to go back and say, that's not something we originally discussed. Remember, you can also always say no. So if the client says, oh, well, I'd like you to do that, can you bill me for it? And it's not something you're comfortable with, you're still well within your rights to say, I'm sorry, that's not really something I offer. You know, when we originally discussed this project, it was based on these terms and these tasks included. I'm able to help with that, but I'm not able to help with this. Now, you could renegotiate the contract if it's something showing up as scope creep that you can do and want to do. Some clients, like I said, don't even realize they're doing it. Other clients are very cognizant that they're asking you to do things outside the scope of the contract. That comes up most often when they're not willing to pay extra for it, or they might not realize how it's affecting you and that it actually takes time to do these things, right? Even just adding a picture to somebody's blog, you have to find it, you have to pay for a properly licensed photo for commercial use, you have to upload it with an alt tag. That could add an extra 5 to 15 minutes to what you have set aside to work on for that client. So sometimes you have to explain to them that it doesn't come down just to the money, but it's also about the time and the expectations that you have. As a freelancer, it is your job to go to the client and point out that scope creep is happening. Don't go in guns blazing with your first conversation and say, hey, you're demanding that I do more work than we agreed to. Kindly point out that that wasn't what you originally agreed to, and then decide from there, is this going to be something where you renegotiate timelines or payment because you're going to take on these tasks, or if it's something you don't do, how are you going to handle that? Are you going to refer it to another freelancer? Are you going to suggest that they go visit Upwork or something like that to go hire somebody? That situation is in your hands. Now, scope creep gets really bad if you let the clients get away with it the first couple of times, and then suddenly it's the fifth thing they're asking you to add on to the contract with no consideration of your time or with no extra pay, and then you push back because you've sent them confusing signals about what is allowed. So you have to always be professional in these conversations and explain, this is outside of what we had originally discussed. Please see the statement of work. Please see the contract for an example. I love documenting this twice in your proposal and in your contract because it gives you two written pieces to refer the client back to. Sometimes the person who signed the contract is not the person you're working on with the project, and that new person might need the reminder of what actually is included in your rate and in the expectations for the project. The more you can avoid scope creep, the better you'll feel about working with your clients. But remember, it's always on you to clarify what you will and won't do. That means being really clear in your proposals and your pitches, what things are off topics, if at all, or how much time you're carving out for that particular client, and when you both would need to consider revisiting the drawing board because the scope of the project has changed a little bit. Always give that client the opportunity to assume that they don't realize that they're asking for too much. So come back very nicely and just say, I understand you want these additional things done, but that's not what we discussed. But if it's happened multiple times, that's when I would start referring people to the contract and to the proposal to clarify what it was that we agreed to in written form and what we both signed and thought the project would be about. Stay tuned and subscribed to this channel to learn more tips about growing, scaling, and leveraging your freelance business online.